Well, I don't need to tell you how food prices have risen so quickly over the last few years. Despite what the official figures tell us, it really does feel like food price inflation is still incredibly high. That makes it difficult for you to get enough food to feed your family. It has huge consequences for people. Andy du Plessis, the managing director at FoodForwardSA's, they supply food to charities. They try and make sure that people have enough food. Andy, good afternoon to you. I mean, we've had such a sustained period of high food prices and high food price inflation. And I presume it's now really affecting particular food groups, vegetables, for example.
Good evening, Stephen, and thank you. Absolutely, we are seeing that the prices of vegetables are skyrocketing, and when the poor cannot afford nutritious foods like yogurts and stuff like that, they go to basic things like vegetables to be able to put into a pot. And we've seen, although food inflation is cooled, based on the Stats SA survey last week, the information, we are seeing still increases in food prices like onions, potatoes are skyrocketing, things like butternut, etc. Basic food groceries are skyrocketing, and it's just getting out of the reach of poor people.
I mean, the thing about potatoes is that that potatoes give you starch, they also give you protein. I mean, it fills you up. If you've got a hungry child, you know, a potato will really make a difference. If their price goes up, it has huge consequences.
Absolutely, and we do know that a large percentage of poor people's budgets are spent on food, closer to like 60% on food. That's not taking into account living expenses like transport, energy, electricity, etc. So every R1 impacts their budget in a severe way. When they've got to spend more money on food, there's less food for transport, less food for electricity, and less food for living expenses, which makes it, you know, it's quite a tightrope that they have to try and balance on, making sure they are able to put food on the table and have enough money for living expenses. So it's quite tough at the moment for those that earn below the upper bound poverty line of 1,500 Rand. As you know, a food budget on average costs about 5,800 Rand. You need 5,800 Rand for a family of 4 to be able to see through a month. And more than 55% of our population on below the upper bound poverty line of 1,580 Rand. Even those that are earning an income, there's a huge food gap that they have to make up somehow.
And I mean, I suppose what also happens is that people then change what they eat. They move to noodles and things like that. Now, they may fill you up, they may get the children to sleep, but they aren't as good for you as vegetables are.
And that's what we're seeing. So we have what's called this triple challenge of we have high levels of malnutrition, but we also have high levels of obesity. And that's simply because families cannot afford healthy, nutritious food. They afford the cheapest food items. And over the last 2 years, because of our interest rates, has impacted on people's livelihoods. Transport has gone up, fuel costs have gone up. People have had to make hard choices in order to meet their budgets, to see sure that they have enough money till the end of the month. So the food choices are changing. We are seeing where they had some money to put away for 3 10 kg bags of maize meal. There's only 2 10 kg bags of maize meal. They bought a pocket of potatoes. They now have to buy piecemeal potatoes to fill up a pot. And they're buying cheaper foods. And what we're finding now is that those cheaper foods are actually not only riskier, but children are ending up needing medical attention, ending up in hospitals. In the Eastern Cape, we are seeing quite a bit of that, where people have run out of money to buy food and have run out of food after 2 weeks. And they have to survive some other way. So they're buying cheaper foods, accessing foods that are not healthy, and we have a huge level of obesity in South Africa, in addition to malnutrition.
You work with other groups that try to get enough food for people. What do they tell you about the problems they're having actually getting enough food themselves? You know, you try and source food for them. Is it difficult to get these donations in?
Absolutely. So we support 2,500 registered nonprofit organizations every month with food 12 months of the year. And what they are telling us is that at local level, in the communities where they are work, so our community kitchens, our early childhood development centers, the shelters that we support, the homes for orphans and vulnerable children, they are all saying to us that they are inundated with the demand for people that need food, and they cannot keep up with the demand. So they're coming back to us and saying, can we have more food? So where previously the food we provided took care of a beneficiary organization's needs, 70% of their needs for a month, Now, because of the influx of people demanding food, that takes care of 40 or 50% only, and they're short on their budgets, and food is expensive, so they rely on organizations like FoodForward.SA that they can get donated food that's safe, that is nutritious, because the challenge of access to food is becoming more and more difficult for the poor trying to balance their month-end budgets.
One of the problems we see, Andy, is that it's been like this now for so long that it becomes cumulative, right? I mean, if you have a child that hasn't had enough food for a day or two, that child can still recover. If it's a week, well, that's more of a problem. Now, for some children, it'll be months on end. The problem just gets worse and worse, builds on itself.
Absolutely. And we're finding that is spreading quite a bit. So where people now run out of money to buy food for after 2 weeks, the rest of the 2 weeks becomes quite arduous, trying to survive, trying to make ends meet. And what we are also seeing is some of the coping strategies are where they're eating less food, they're eating cheaper foods, and the parents are also skipping meals so that the children can eat. So the parents are often going without food for 2 or 3 days so that the children can have something to eat. And even when there is something to school, which is not always the case at the schools, at the primary schools and high schools through the National School Nutrition Program, when those children get home into the night, they are hungry, and oftentimes there's very little to eat. So we find the incidence of malnutrition is growing. In the Eastern Cape, children are literally dying of starvation. And we are making sure we ramp up services there to support children that are malnourished, and also organizations to make sure we prevent this from happening. Even underweight mothers that are pregnant and nursing mothers that are underweight, they don't have the proper weight to be able to have a child that is healthy, and those are huge risks. So we are finding that our children, 27% of our children are malnourished and they are stunted, which is irreversible after 5 or 6 years old, and they will remain that way to affect their cognitive development. And over years, we will have a health force, a workforce that is uneducated or semi-skilled or low-skilled labor, so we're missing a lot. They're falling through that safety net, and so it will affect our economy in the long run.
Andy du Plessis, thank you, Managing Director at FoodForward SA. Very sobering. Do appreciate the time.